Is a good boy. Yeah, Mr. Camera Boy? Is that you? Yes, it is. Okay, can I make a video? Can I? Okay, let's go. This might be my favorite story of the Civil War, and it happened 75 years after the war was over. It'll grab you, folks. It's a powerful example of war reality. So sit back and absorb a tale of a man who fought frontline up close and personal. So howdy again, folks. Rick from the Boondocking Bears. Well, a couple of years ago, once again, I visited Gettysburg National Military Park to realize a dream I had to walk the fields of Pickett's charge. It was part of a tour put on by the Civil War Trust in conjunction with the Gettysburg Licensed Battlefield Guide. Now, believe it or not, 75 years on from the battle, there were still soldiers alive who fought on these fields, albeit now all well into their 90s, and all who were able gathered on the battlefield to reunite, reminisce, honor, and remember. Now, the reunion of 1938 was a national event and a pretty big deal at the time. Most then understood that it would be the last of its kind. After all, relentlessly Father Time marches on, and the few remaining soldiers of the battle would soon depart the field for the last time. So to commemorate the 75th, the federal government arranged for each surviving veteran, almost 2,000 of the 8,000 still alive, who could and wanted to attend to return to the fields of Gettysburg. Amid honors, ceremony, and pageantry, President Franklin Roosevelt rose and spoke, acknowledged the veterans' service, dedicating a new monument, the Eternal Light Peace Memorial that we still see today. Now, if you've been to Gettysburg, you know in the town and surrounding countryside there are numerous hotels, motels, B&Bs, and campgrounds. And you'd think these frail veterans would be put up in those comfortable lodgings considering their advanced age. And many were. But others chose to stay on the fields where they camped and fought so long ago. So in addition to the hotel lodging, army camps replicating those used during the Civil War were established on the battlefield. The veterans that wished to slept on the ground or on cots in tents as they had 15 years before. To me, and I'm sure many of you, it almost seems surreal to think about that, but that's what happened. So now back to my visit and the amazing tale that was about to unfold. At a break during our walk of Pickett's charge, Chris, our licensed battlefield guy, began a story of an event that occurred at the 145th Gettysburg celebration in 2008. There, an amazing story was told. So as he related, on a warm summer day in 2008, after his talk to a small group during a tour of the battlefield, a lanky elderly gentleman in the crowd asked to say a few words. So he rose and began to talk, and he soon revealed, astonishing everyone present, that he was at the reunion of 1938, and as it turned out, a very active participant. At the time, he related, understandably, the organizers were very concerned about the veterans' well-being. They worried that some or many of the 90-plus-year-old men, many sleeping in tents under blazing heat, might well expire on the very field they had fought upon 75 years earlier. So to prevent that, they enlisted the help of the local Boy Scouts. He went on to explain that the organizers arranged for each veteran to have a Boy Scout, a youngster in his teens, charged with only one task. He was to never leave the veteran's side. He was to do his bidding regardless of what was asked, take him wherever he wanted to go, at any time of the day or night, and on only one condition. Please, for the love of God, keep that soldier alive. Well, fortunately, the battlefield yielded no further casualties that memorable weekend in 38. All went perfectly well and the veterans were deserving celebrities. And we know all this because the tall elderly man telling this story was indeed one of those Boy Scouts. So now, with the group and battlefield guide hanging on this elderly gentleman's every word, they begged him to go on. And so he did, recalling of his time with a Confederate veteran at the 75th reunion. So on the Saturday afternoon of the event, the veteran asked to walk the field of Pickett's charge, the same field he crossed into the face of Union guns and artillery on that fateful scalding hot day, July 3rd, 1863. So the Boy Scout made arrangements and shortly found himself escorting the veteran Confederate across the field. Now, as they walked, the old rebel remained quiet, probably remembering and reliving the terrible events of that afternoon charge of his youth. Now, to casual observers, the ground of Pickett's charge appears mostly flat. It is anything but, however. A number of swales run parallel to the advancing Confederate line, so as the wave of soldiers advanced, they would momentarily disappear into a swale only to reappear closer to the Union line than was before. Those small valleys were welcome relief to the Confederate soldiers, providing temporary line of sight cover from the withering fire coming from the Federal line. Those little valleys must have seemed like gifts from God to those advancing Confederates. So the fellow continued with his story, and by now, despite the vast age difference between the Boy Scout and his Confederate veteran, they were fast friends. He described the Southerner as frail and hunched over, though relatively tall for the time. He sported a long white beard that came down to the middle of his chest, and he wore a long coat despite the heat, and also wore a large hat that he had never removed. So the veteran and the boy slowly made the walk over the field of Pickett's charge. Down into a swale and up the other side, then down into another. They walked in silence, the veteran immersed in memories. And as they emerged out of the swale about 2/3 of the way to the Union line, the soldier stopped and looked around. Standing very still, he scanned the battlefield forward and to each side, seeming to take stock of where he was, likely remembering that horrible day. After moments, very concerned, the young Boy Scout asked him if he was okay. Then, turning to the lad, the soldier removed his hat, and running the length of the left side of his head, creasing his skull, was a deep scar, a trench, in fact, completely bereft of hair. He looked at the young boy, then quietly said, "Son, we can go back now. This is as far as I got." Folks, this is why I study the Civil War. Be grateful for what you have, build bridges across time and differences, enjoy life, share it with all of goodwill, smile, be charitable, and thanks for watching. We're established on the battlefield, complete with a era-style tents, campfires, and I twice, so let's start again.